Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're so glad that you are with us. And before we get back into our story about a homeowner association in Georgia, and if you're just joining us, the members there want a total recall of every board member and having a special meeting just to get them out of their...
Kick the bums out.
Kick the bums out.
Yeah.
That's right. We'll talk about that. But before we do, I want to remind our listeners in the second hour, we've got a great resource for you. It's called What's New. It's our bi-monthly newsletter. We have more than 18,000 people that are subscribers right now. I think it's probably one of the largest newsletters in the state that deals with homeowner association issues and multifamily housing.
That's a fair claim.
I think it is. And it's yours for free. And help us make it even larger by giving us a call at New Concepts 952-922-2500. Ask for Courtney, and she'll make sure that you start receiving your free subscription. And you can receive that electronically or by mail. Either
All right.
way.
I have many relatives that get that newsletter, by the way.
do?
I'm doing my part to build up the circulation.
Well, that's probably 3,000 right there with the Crockett's.
Sure. Also, if you want to comment or have a question about any of the stories we talk about on our show, please call our hotline and leave us a message, 952-224-2668, 952-224-2668, and tell us what you think. Tell us what's on your mind. Give us some ideas for future shows.
Yeah, and that's because we've changed our format now to being pre-recorded, but we will give your thoughts, your comments, our attention, and we'll comment on it next time we meet. But here we are. Let's get back to the Woodlands Condominium Association in the Hamilton Township in Georgia. And Tony, as we talked about, the homeowners wanted to get rid of everybody, and you said it's a pretty large homeowner association.
It is. It's a huge homeowners association, 756 units. And the homeowners who signed a 250-person petition are upset because of lack of maintenance.
Yeah.
They feel like the property is being neglected in spite of the fact that the association collects $2 million a year in fees.
Yeah, and that's the comment. Whether or not this is true, that there is neglect by the board and they should be recalled.
Yeah.
We wanted to address the comment that was made.
That very gross comment.
Yes, because it's something that we hear all the time.
That's right.
It's easy in this day and age for people to just kind of color something very quickly. Yeah. The idea that the board collects $2 million a year, that's a lot of money. Of course it is. It's a lot of money when you're dealing with an individual budget. It's not a lot of money if you're dealing with a city. It's
of
not,
756 homes.
Yes, it's not a lot if you're dealing with a
But it definitely
city.
colors the perception you have when you read the story, because it's only giving you part of the facts.
Yeah. And here's what the person said. You would think that amount of money coming in, simple things like maintenance, would be handled without any problem.
Why would you think that? Why would you think that when all you know is how much the income is?
Yeah. I hear this kind of statement from people that are well-meaning, well-intentioned folks.
Sure.
But what they are, I guess, sharing or exposing to us is ignorance. People
I
don't
think you're actually being kind, assuming that it's ignorance. I think it's very deliberate sometimes.
Oh, so you're right. Sometimes it could be deliberate, but and when I say ignorant, people don't like that term. But I mean ignorant in it used to mean being an ignorant person meant someone who just didn't know the facts. They didn't
have all the information.
They didn't have all the information
and
or knowledge.
I understand that's what you mean.
And that's exactly what I think is taking place. You can't simply just turn to the board and say, well, thus and such didn't happen this year in our homeowners association. Therefore, it is neglect by the board.
Right.
And it is their fault as if the homeowners have no responsibility whatsoever.
You started out the last segment talking about personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about here, isn't it?
Yes.
That each member of that association has personal responsibility for what goes on there, as well as the board.
I was in a board meeting not too long ago where the angst was about this very kind of subject, where a homeowner said, I had a water leak, that came through my roof.
Okay.
The only reason I have a water leak is because you, the board, are negligent in taking care of maintenance the way it should be, and therefore they are talking about this homeowner wanting to have a lawsuit. They're asking for money, and I had someone on the board who was just full of angst saying, isn't that true? Maybe we are negligent.
They were feeling so shameful about it.
And I think that one of the things that people need to do is to take a step back and to take a look at it this way, I think. Is it just the board's responsibility here? Are they really negligent? Or is it the case many times, most of the time, 99% of the time, where the board would like to raise dues, not a huge amount, but a little bit, because they can see that costs are going up for water, for utilities like electricity, for that contractor who wants to do asphalt this year compared to last year.
Yep.
And if you're going to do the same amount of maintenance that you did the year before, and if inflation's the factor and costs have gone up, you can't do the same amount with the same amount of money. You're going backwards. You have to
increase the fees. That's right.
And so a lot of boards will say, well, we're not going to raise dues because we understand the will of the people. And they're saying...
And often that is the will of their members. The members say, we don't want any increase in our fees.
But if that happens... is it the board's responsibility, or shouldn't the individual homeowners also take responsibility and say, you know what, we've asked you not to do this. We've asked you not to raise dues.
Right.
Now, we can't hold you responsible for things that don't get done.
Well, that would be the reasonable approach. That would be the reasonable
approach.
Opinion.
Thank you.
But I've talked about this before. I have worked with homeowners associations where the board for 30 years felt like its number one job was to not increase monthly assessments. They thought that was their number one job, and they
were proud of that.
And they were proud of it, and they made everybody happy. And after 30 years, the place is absolutely falling to the ground because they did not uphold their fiduciary responsibility and make sure that there was enough money for things to get done.
Yeah. And how does that work when it comes time to sell? Then we've got enough problems and issues with foreclosures and people paying too much for property over the last few years and being upside down on the mortgage anyway. You can't add another facet like
neglect
to this as well.
So if they collect $2 million in income, the other pieces of information you need to know is what are the expenses? And what is the association responsible to maintain? And do they have enough money? Is $2 million really enough money to cover the obligation? I'd say if the place looks neglected, it is not enough to cover the common areas.
And so the homeowners need to also have some responsibility there too. Let's just take a quick little bit here before we go to our next break. The other part that I'd like to cover here, besides that comment, is just the idea of how do you know that it is appropriate for me to ask for a special meeting.
Okay.
Because you've had people ask you probably about that too from time to time.
That's right.
I do quite a bit, and people are always surprised at
your answer?
At my answer, especially boards when I say yes. I think you should have allow for a special meeting.
Yep.
And the board will originally say, well, why? These are just people that are angry and upset. And I said, even more important, because one of the things that I think takes place with the special meeting. In this case, with the Woodlands homeowners, we talked about how they received more than 25% of the homeowners who thought it was a good idea. They all signed a petition.
They collected signatures, yep.
So you could see that there were a number of homeowners that had this on their mind as an issue.
Yep.
If you have a dissenter and you're on the board, by all means, tell them how to do it. Tell them to go out and get signatures. They may find out if they don't get 10% of the signatures or whatever it is that they need to bring a special meeting together. That allows them to visually see and understand, you know what? Maybe I'm in the minority here. Mm-hmm. Maybe everybody else is okay with the status quo and what that is.
Right.
And so I think by allowing and not being afraid to move ahead with it.
They shouldn't discourage it.
Not at all.
Our board should not discourage it.
Not at all. The only other thing that I'd like to say about this I think is very important is you need to be careful when you're asking for that meeting and that notice of that meeting. You need to let people know exactly what's going to be covered. And so because anytime you're gathering all the homeowners together, they need to know if I'm going to attend or not, what's on the agenda. They may say, oh, this is being discussed. I don't think that's important. I won't attend. So you can't bring something up that's not on the agenda.
That's right.
Later, because that's unfair to the people.
You have not announced to the whole membership what's going to be under discussion. So homeowners should be mindful that you don't go to a special meeting with a laundry list of your complaints or your concerns. Yeah. The special meeting is held for one issue.
And so, yes, and so that special meeting, in the case of recalling the board, it needs to be not only to discuss recalling the board, but if they're recalled, elections that night for new board members.
There you go.
Because if you forget that little fact, you can't, I don't think you can move ahead with the election of the board because you didn't tell people that's what's going to go on the meeting.
Yeah, good
so
point.
So you've got to be that specific.
Yeah.
Well, these are just some of the things that need to be looked at. We'd love to hear from you if you have a comment about what has taken place with your homeowner association. Call the hotline 952-224-2668 and let us know. We'd be happy to share those thoughts next week as well. Let's take a break. When we come back, I've been wanting to and waiting to get a hold of this story here for us to talk about. And this is the Homeowner Association, where it's not just an election, but it goes down to the very issue of free speech. Fascinating story. You're only going to hear it here on Where You Live with Gene and Tony. Back after this.